it is my pleasure to introduce Dani Klein. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Yes, we are going to have a great time. So my husband was on his way. He's an intellectual. He said you should quote some Greek, and I'm not going to remember who, that said you don't step in the river, the same river twice, because you're not the same person twice. Anyone? Oh, okay, sure. Jews, what can I say? Intellectuals. And so I like that idea that we're not stepping in the same river again with really God. And is Calvin here? No. Oh, good, because I can blame him. Because I was at a Shabbat a couple weeks ago, and he stopped to say, everyone, this is Dani. This is going to be the funniest show you've ever been to. And I was like, oh my God. So it's not like the funniest show you've ever seen, but I will say this, amazing courage, authenticity, and surprisingly, when you ask people about a moment that brought them to their knees, 5 of the stories are about parenting tonight. I'm just saying. I don't know. It's, you know, so that's that. I had a show that ran for 10 years called Afterbirth, Stories You Won't Read in a Parenting Magazine. And somehow, for this one, it's been highly influenced by that same idea. But yes, these are really personal stories. Everyone's worked really hard. I'm not that easy to be with. I give a lot of notes, and people ask things like, are we getting paid? But still, I think it's kind of worth it. I hope you'll think it's worth it. And we're just going to move it all along. This first gentleman, David DeSantos, you will recognize him from television, from Animal Kingdom, and what was the other one you said? SWAT! His wife, by the way, you're going to hear later, because she knows everything about David, and so she keeps me posted, and everything about herself, and everything about their kid. Okay, this is maybe the worst introduction ever, but the other thing that I meant to say is, if you need to go to the bathroom or like eat, you know when it says like, welcome to Temple Israel, welcome home, that's what we mean. Like, welcome home, feel at home here tonight, because we deserve it. Okay, so please welcome David DeSantos.
Thank you. Cedar Sinai, June 15th, 2023. We're 18 hours into my wife's emergency-induced labor. She slept about 2.5 hours, and for the first 13 hours, she went unmedicated. And for anyone who doesn't truly know what an induction entails, let's just say that to try to do it unmedicated means my wife could survive Navy SEAL Hell Week. I get lidocaine and nitrous just to get my teeth cleaned, so we all know who would win in a knife fight. Anyway, she finally succumbs at hour 13, and she gets the shot. She takes her first breath. Those fucking cookies better be fucking worth it, she says. Now, for those of you who haven't given birth at Cedars yet, there is a rumor going around all of Los Angeles that it's the best chocolate chip cookie in town. I'm pretty sure they're just reheated Famous Amos cookies, but when you're exhausted from labor, even matzah tastes good. So day has turned into night, and it has now turned back into day, and things have not been progressing the way the nurses have wanted, yet our baby's vitals are strong. I saw a casting breakdown for labor husband, and it said, he's an encouraging and uplifting, calm, and stoic presence. I'm taking my casting seriously. It's an Emmy-worthy performance, but I'm getting scared. I've been sending text updates to our immediate family, but at this point, I'm not sure what to tell them. I step out of the room to take a breath. And it hits me. Nothing from the moment we got to the hospital has gone according to plan. I feel alone. I need someone to talk to, but there's no one to talk to. No one is going through what we are going through in this moment, at this moment. Who can I talk to? Ooh, got it. It's time to pray. Mission, find the chapel or the synagogue, or what do you call it at Cedars? I have no idea. Find the dimly lit room. I make my way downstairs, I approach a security desk, and they point me in the right direction. Left, right, sliding doors, atrium, jackpot. I approach the doors. Closed for remodeling. I ask the security guard behind me if there's another chapel. He says, "You're standing in front of it." I said, "Right, but it says it's closed for remodeling." He looks at me quizzically as if no one has ever stepped foot inside the Cedars synagogue. Ugh, whatever. I'll figure it out, I say. I walk away frustrated, desperate to find a room or something so I can hit my knees and talk to myself. A few swift twists and turns, and I come to an empty conference room. There are coffee pots in the corner that have been turned on, so clearly I am on a time clock. I hit my knees and I start having a conversation, but this time I do not talk to God. Tears stream down my face. "Mom, please help me." Silence. "Mom, I know you're watching over me, and I know you're in this room, and I know you're protecting me. Please help Meredith through this next phase of labor. Give her the strength to push and bring our baby into this world. I miss you so much. I wish you were here. I wish you were here." In the 23 years since my mom has died, I've said those words countless times. My mom, Marilyn Meyer, or Mare for short, passed away when I was 25 and she was 50. Now, obviously, it was too soon. She was too young. But as my years have added up, I realize just how young 50 is. See, the thing is, I never thought I'd be married. I was happy being a bachelor for many years, but let me be clear though, I was not a Pier 1 Imports Darkwood Bali themed furniture bachelor. We all have one of those friends. Their place smells like Tom Ford Black Orchid and they have plenty of hookahs. No, I was not that. I was a one-bedroom Koreatown PlayStation 4 bachelor. Now, I'm not proud of it, but when I started dating my now wife, I warned her that when The Last of Us 2 came out on PlayStation, she would not see me for 5 straight days, and she thought I was kidding. Anyway, it never occurred to me that I would meet the love of my life at 44 years old. It never occurred to me that I would be having my first son at 48 years old. I still play late 30s when I shave, though. I never considered what feelings would arise with not having a mom walk you down the aisle, but see, I never expected to get married. All these feelings of loss and confusion as I come to terms with the fact that for the rest of my son's life, he will only know of his grandma Mare through stories I tell him. If he ever plays Little League, he'll know that his grandma Mare was voted Team Mom 3 years in a row at Sherman Oaks Little League. He will know that his middle name, Marlowe, has the first 3 letters of his grandma Mare's name. He will know that I, too, was a mama's boy, and that he is the luckiest kid on the planet because his mom is his mom. And when the day comes that we have to have the talk with him, I'll finally be able to tell him, okay, so your grandma Mare was an adult film producer in the 80s, and I used to box VHS tapes in a warehouse full of porn, so we're gonna do things differently. That is a true story. Cottonwood Productions, Masterpiece Distributors, look them up. Anyway. I wish you were here. 5 words that an entire world lives inside. And for years, people would ask, "How are you?" And I'd reply, "Good, good, good." It's funny, I've actually never felt as close to her as I do now. Or, "She's always with me." And I did believe that most of the time. But see, those years after she died, they got dark. The idea that my mom was watching was hard to hold on to when my days were bleeding into my nights, and when I was waking up on my sofa or sometimes the bathroom floor. To be fair, I had a futon at the time, so waking up on the bathroom floor sometimes was nicer. It's hard to say mom is watching when you're driving in a blackout. Finally, in 2003, I finally became willing to ask for help. And the cool thing was I only had to change one thing: everything. But see, something happened. As I cleaned up one area of my life, I started to find out that there were other areas of my life that needed to be cleaned up. And so, unfortunately, after a few years of protestation, I had the willingness to change them too. And as the years melted away, it became clear as day that Mom was watching the whole time. See, she wasn't judging, she wasn't punishing, she was just there, guiding me, allowing me to make mistakes and have experiences. She was there when I fell into the deepest darkness. Maybe she was even the one that said, "Hey, call that one friend you know, he might be able to help." So when I'm walking down the aisle getting ready to marry Meredith, and my closest friend in the world has his arm around me as I walk, I realize that from the tragedy of her death, my life has been an unfolding flower of joy. You know, Meredith, my soulmate, who, funny enough, is also known as Mare, is marrying me because of every experience that has followed my mom's death. Jackson Marlowe DeSantos, our son, is only here because on March 29th, 2000, my mom said, "Don't worry, I'll always be there with you." Oh, sir, we need this room for a meeting. Oh, sorry, I was just getting up. So I make my way back up to labor and delivery, and we still have about 8 hours left before Meredith's unplanned C-section occurs. I see her in bed. She's exhausted. She has a fever. Yet she has a fire in her eyes that I have never seen. She is a warrior. She is the strongest woman I have ever known. And when she finally says, "Fuck this nonsense, cut me," she sacrifices herself to bring Jackson into this world. And from day one, she is risking her life for the life of our son. And once again, it hits me, I was an unplanned C-section. My mom risked her life to bring me into this world, and she was a single mother. So finally, Jackson Marlowe DeSantos was born June 15th, 2023 via the sunroof, not the slide, at 6:49 p.m. We gave him the Hebrew name Gabriel Lior, and when Dr. Andy Spall came to our house on the 8th day, raise your hands if Dr. Andy cut your son's beanie too. Anyone else? Nice. 3 cheers for Doc. Yep, awesome, fantastic. He asked for something special, an artifact, or something that means a lot. I went into our bedroom, and I brought out this old chair. And this chair was my great-grandmother Debbie's, who came to America in 1908. And then when she passed away, she gave it to my grandma Janet. And then she gave the chair to her daughter, my mom. And when it's our time, Jackson will have this same chair in his home. 5 generations, 1 chair. I wish you were here. Yeah, you've always been with me. Thanks.
David DeSantos. Thank you, David. All right, kicking it off. All right, we are going to keep this going. This next gentleman okay, crazy bravery. He will tell you himself he's an interior designer, not a performer, and yet he has graced us with this beautiful story. So please welcome Greg Roth.
Oh, good. I can't see any of you. Perfect. Perfect. Daniel and I met on a blind date in the late spring of 1997, which began with him rear-ending my parked car in the driveway of the house that I was house-sitting in Manhattan Beach. I was standing at the kitchen door, which faced the driveway. It was a Dutch door. I'm an interior designer, so I know the names of doors. And I had the upper part of the door opened. So I'm standing there talking on the phone, watching out for this Daniel Shapiro person to show up. And when he does, I wave him into the driveway. And as he passes slowly by, our eyes lock, and I think, oh, he's handsome. Hopefully he's thinking the same thing about me. He was. So we're having this moment as he passes by, and he hits my car. But I'm good-natured. And like I said, he's a looker. So I let it go. And we drive down in his car to a Japanese place in Torrance where we have a dinner that lasts for 3 hours. It goes well. So well that at the end, I ask him point blank, what do you want? Like, what is it you're looking for? Well, he responds after taking a moment to actually consider the question, which I appreciated. I want somebody to create a life with. I want somebody to travel with. I want somebody to bring home to my family. I want somebody to make a family with. And since these were the very same things that I myself had been looking for, particularly the part about making a family, I decide then and there that I will not be filing an auto insurance claim against him. This is what you get when you hire an interior designer. 4 years later, Daniel and I have settled into a home we bought together. It's a charming mid-city Spanish-ish bungalow we've painstakingly renovated. We've joined a synagogue, this one. We've gotten married, which was still illegal then, but the gays don't always follow the rules, so we did it anyway. We're settling into our careers. I've settled into a new, unblemished car. Now we just need to settle a little quandary. How do we make a family? So Steve and Jamie come to mind. They're a gay couple that we've become friends with, whose journey to parenthood a few years earlier had absolutely captivated us. Parenthood. We'd never before met two men who were parents together. Of course, we knew about in vitro fertilization and surrogacy. It's the 1990s, not the 1890s. But we'd never known or met two men who had actually become parents. So it's not that we don't know how to make a baby. It's just that we haven't yet figured out how we're going to make that happen for us. We consider adoption, but it just doesn't feel quite like us. Being genetically connected to our kids feels like it's important, like it might give legitimacy to our family in a world that doesn't quite have the ability yet to embrace a two-dad family. So we start exploring surrogacy. There's a surprising number of options. We did not think it would be this complicated. Egg donor, surrogate, lawyer, agencies, and the cost. The cost really God, I know that birthing a baby on a good day for a conventional, we made this baby in the most unremarkable, straightforward way can be costly, but when you're talking about a couple of gay men, or really anyone whose equipment isn't quite task ready, well, the road to baby can be really expensive, like fancy luxury car expensive. But we're determined, and we have good credit, and we have supportive parents, and we luckily have the resources, so we forge ahead. We find a surrogacy agency that works specifically with gay couples, and they tell us, this is a process. It's going to take a full 2 years. 2 years. What happened to 9 months? So there are actually a lot of steps. And by the way, not at all like the baby-making steps for the straights. It's really more complicated. Here's the to-do list. Decide on natural versus egg donor surrogacy. Meet the fertility doctor to review the costs, the procedures, the timelines, more cost contingencies, risks, expectations. Side note, did you know that the #1 top qualifier for an egg donor isn't looks or IQ or what colleges they got into or weight or family medical history or if there are superheroes or criminals in the family? It's actually the donor's age. 24 years tops. Ageism apparently is not only the realm of Hollywood. But back to the steps. You need to get your finances in order. Create a personal profile for prospective surrogates to review, which outlines your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, and then shows photos of you and how cute you are and how amazing your life is and how what amazing parents you'll be. Then you wait for the surrogate to pick you. You decide if you like her, you meet her, and if it's not a fit, you start over again. But if it is, then you start the dance of legal paperwork. It's a lot, and that's way before there's even any thought of setting up blind dates between sperm and egg. But despite the insane costs and the seemingly endless timeline, we march on. We settle on egg donor surrogacy. There just aren't that many women offering to carry a baby for you and to offer you their eggs. So now we have to find a surrogate. After a few false starts, our agency tells us about Audrey, a divorced mother of 4, who's not only driven to help people who can't have babies on their own, but also happens to find pregnancy to be joyous and effortless. Good for her. Audrey has reviewed our profile and is eager to meet us. We set a date to meet for dinner. We like Audrey immediately. She's easygoing, quick to smile, confident, and quite simply ready to be a surrogate. She only has one concern, surprisingly just the one. I don't want to have a C-section, she tells us. I mean, unless it's absolutely necessary, I just do not want to have surgery. Again, that is fine by us. We sign the contracts and we're off to the races. Now all we need is a healthy crop of farm-fresh eggs. A healthy crop of very, very young farm-fresh eggs. Initially, we're thinking that we'll go for a Jewish egg donor, but since the baby will need to have a rabbi-observed mikveh conversion anyway, we open up our options considerably by taking the donor's religion out of the equation. This leads us to Stephanie. Stephanie's attractive. I mean, yeah. Looks matter, they just do, and from a creative and talented family. No criminals. And she's 22, perfect. She responds with enthusiasm to our profile. We negotiate the contract terms. She asks for way more money than we expect. We freak out, and we also agree. We sign. Done. Then things start to move kind of quickly. Audrey prepares for the embryo transfer. Stephanie, who, by the way, we never meet or actually speak with, prepares for the egg retrieval. We're told by the doctors that a good egg retrieval will yield 8 to 10 eggs. Stephanie produces 22. As it turns out, eggs can be fertilized with a common household fertilizer known as sperm. So, Some very important decisions need to be made, and one very important action needs to be taken. I'll shorthand this for you. Decision. We decide that we'll each fertilize half of the eggs so that each of us has plenty of chances of creating viable embryos. Decision. Whose embryo gets transferred? We go with both. We'll transfer one of Daniel's and one of mine. We could end up with twins, but again, we are fine with that. Action. On the day of, at the doctor's office, Daniel and I produce the requisite genetic material. We do the deed. In separate rooms. We're in separate rooms, so yeah. The doctor fertilizes the eggs in a petri dish, actually in 2 petri dishes. We wait for a few days to hear who makes better to hear how the embryos are growing. And then we get the call. Plenty of healthy embryos in both dishes. We meet Audrey at the office. She stirrups up. Yes, I just made that a verb. And yes, we're both in the room, but at a discreet distance to give her some privacy. A lab tech enters carrying a very long, very thin tube needle situation that contains 2 very invisible, very expensive, and very potential babies. Transfer complete. After a few days wherein we badger Audrey with concerned questions, do you feel pregnant? Are you nauseous? Is the baby kicking yet? I know, but is it? She goes for the blood test, and she is pregnant. And we are elated. The pregnancy, as per Audrey's custom, goes well, except for one little scare early on that looks like a possible genetic abnormality, but thank God, turns out to be nothing. The baby grows and starts to move. We do not find out the sex. And Audrey tells us how this baby, unlike her own kids, is super active, like turning and moving and flipping around in there, just having the best time ever. And a nickname emerges, Flipper. The due date approaches. The grandparents arrive to lend support. Excitement builds. Daniel and I are anxious and eager and ready. And the due date arrives and passes, as does the next day, and the next day, and the next day. We drive down to Anaheim to join Audrey, whose belly at this point seems much more like Shamu than Flipper. For her OBG appointment, the doctor schedules to induce her the next day. The following morning, Daniel and I and our parents arrive at Children's Hospital of Orange County. The infant car seat has been properly installed in the still pristine car. The diaper bag is fully prepared. We bring a huge box of pastries and snacks so that everyone can keep nourished, and in we go. We walk in, and Audrey is in position in the birthing suite, propped up in bed, wired and monitored. Her sea creature-filled belly is draped in plentiful folds of cascading white sheets. Several attentive nurses, who, judging by the warm and receptive greetings they offer us, have been duly apprised of our unique parental configuration. Note that it's 2003 and we're in the OC. They are tending to Audrey and the beeping, blinking, whirring machines that continuously check and recheck her and Flipper baby. The energy in the room is amazing. We are all of us, just beyond excited and amazed. 2 of Audrey's besties are there. They're at her side, holding her hands as she silently, stoically endures what clearly are intense contractions. The doctor arrives, checks the progress as Audrey continues to manage her contractions with grace. Suddenly, I notice the doctor and the lead nurse at the monitor whispering in hushed tones. Daniel and I look at each other, confused. We're seeing something of concern, the doctor says. The baby's heart rate is plunging with the contractions. This is not good. It happens again. The edges of the room dissolve and anxiety pours in. The doctor's mouth moves in slow motion, but his words come at us like a bullet train. We need to get this baby out now. We need to get you into surgery immediately. The gravity of the situation is marked by the sudden searing shift to near silence, even as nurses and attendants jump into action. I look at Daniel, tears stream down his face. We're both thinking the same thing. What's happening? Is our baby going to make it? How can this be happening? Why is this happening? What's happening? Audrey really did not want a C-section, really. God. Running down the hospital hallway with a team of nurses, the doctor leading, attendants guiding Audrey in her bed, the lead nurse turns around and says, "Which one of you is coming into the OR? Only one of you is permitted. Hospital rules. And you need to get suited up. Stat." Daniel and I, bewildered, speechless. How can we possibly make this decision? The doctor cuts in, shouting over his shoulder, "Both of them. They're both coming in." Hero. I don't remember scrubbing in or entering the OR, but I can still picture everything clearly in slow motion. The kinetic chaos of the preceding moments transforms into a concentrated calm as the procedure unfolds. And before we know it, the doctor reaches in and carefully disentangles the umbilical cord from the baby's right ankle and from her neck, freeing her. Yes, it's a she, it's a girl, to breathe her first breath and to enter this world. She's fine. She's alive and healthy and great and gorgeous and scrunchy and gooey, and she's ours, really ours. Really. God. I'm placing the baby into the infant car seat carefully, so carefully, as we prepare to bring home this new creature, this tiny, lively, needy but determined, exquisite, and lovely porpoise baby. We get her snugly, safely into the car, you know, the still new, unblemished car. And then Daniel and I, we have this moment where we sort of deliberate over who will drive and who will sit in the back seat, you know, to make sure that her head doesn't flop around when we hit a bump, or just to watch her breathe. Despite his driving record, I let Daniel drive. I climb into the back seat with our new baby. And then Daniel and I and our baby girl, who we redubbed the much better suited name Lily. The three of us, the family that we created, head back to our mid-city LA, Spanish-ish, work-in-progress bungalow home. Thank you.
Yes, Greg! So cool. How many of you remember Dr. Kildare? Anyone? Dr. Kildare, right? Can't you just see him? They're both coming in. That's what I was thinking. We need another guy like that. All right, we are gonna keep this going. This next woman, okay, I just found out, which I should have known. Remember the story with Robert De Niro and the guy who ruined everybody's lives? Madoff, thank you. It is not early onset, so don't even. But that Madoff story, this writer wrote that, and it was adapted it was so good. I'm so excited. Now I'm intimidated by you. So please welcome Laurie Sandell.
Do you know? Oh, never mind. Figured it out. A little shorter than Greg. When I look at my life today, I always have to laugh. I'm a wife and mom, specifically a baseball mom. I live in a nice suburban home. I'm co-head of the Briskin PTA. I make homemade birthday cards and I knit, and I save every empty paper towel roll for possible school projects. Let's just say it's a long way from being a stripper in Japan. Am I right? Am I right? So to fill in the blanks between stripper and PTA head, let me take you back to 1970 Stockton, California. I grew up as the oldest of 3 sisters with a stay-at-home mom, a dad who taught economics at the University of the Pacific, and a dog named Gypsy. My family looked traditional from the outside, but behind closed doors, we were anything but. My dad had emigrated from Argentina in his early 20s, and he still had a thick Argentine accent. Because no one else in the family spoke Spanish, the only phrase that really sunk in was the one I heard throughout my childhood when he was angry. Puta parió carajo, no se cincho pelotas! Which I later learned via Google Translate means roughly spawn or daughter of a whore. Stop squeezing my fucking balls. He was brilliant and learned and more accomplished than anyone I'd ever met. He spoke 8 languages. He had 6 degrees, including a PhD from Columbia and a law degree from NYU. He'd written position papers for Henry Kissinger, served as an advisor on the National Security Council, and lent an ear to George H.W. Bush. But it was his exploits that were downright legendary. As a Green Beret in Vietnam, he'd parachuted into the jungle with General Westmoreland, and then, when Westmoreland got stuck in a tree, my father cut him down with a knife. Westmoreland plummeted to the ground, and my father forever became known as the man who dropped Westmoreland. As a kid, you can only imagine how cool I thought my father was. He used to pick me up from school on a motorcycle, toss me a helmet that looked like the Great Gazoos in the Flintstones, then race through the mean streets of our suburban neighborhood at terrifying speeds, flying through stop signs and dipping dangerously close to the pavement on curves. Other kids I knew were reading like Little House on the Prairie at bedtime. But my dad would tuck me in with a story about the time he almost got arrested when he was sitting in a theater in Buenos Aires, and a man interrupted the play to announce the death of Doña Maria Eva Duarte de Perón, aka Evita. And my dad jumped 10 feet in the air and yelled, "The whore is dead! The whore is dead!" He was fun and brimming with stories, and I worshiped him. My mother, on the other hand, could be described as a Jewish wasp, intensely private, impeccably dressed, and allergic to joy. My sisters and I called her a rug sweeper. Just sweep it under the rug when no one can see it. Anyway, when I was 8, we moved from California to a suburb of New York City, where my dad took a teaching job at Ramapo College. At first, life seemed pretty normal, or at least what I'd been raised to think was in the realm of normal. But in the fall of 1984, things started to get a little freaky. My dad suddenly quit his professor job and turned his attention to what I can only describe as militia-style survivalism. Except we were Jewish, so we didn't move into the wilderness. He turned our basement into a bomb shelter and outfitted it with 20-gallon drums of lentils, dried milk, water, boxes of food, medical supplies, tools, wool blankets, and gas masks. Since he was also a self-professed collector, really more of a hoarder, he also stocked it with his weapons collection, 500 or so knives and guns, 45s, 22s, Russian Kalashnikovs, Colt AR-15s, and, for God knows what reason, an elephant gun. He set up a ham radio system in our den and procured ham radio licenses for me and my younger sisters, even though I'm pretty sure none of us were proficient in Morse code. I would be sitting there watching Punky Brewster and eating SpaghettiOs, and the radio would start crackling with, N2FSO, N2FSO, come in, N2FSO. I would push the button at the base of the microphone and say, tentatively, Dad? and he would shout, "I am not Dad, I am WK6R." Was it normal? I mean, yeah, to me it was. I couldn't help it if I had a brilliant libertarian father with government connections. I supported his endeavors by marching around my middle school with pro-Reagan signs. But by my senior year of high school, things had changed. He had always had an explosive temper, but now he'd become a full-blown rager. I remember him barging into a local bar to retrieve my sister Karen, screaming, "She's only 16!" at the bouncer, and embarrassing her in front of all her friends, even though my dad himself, in a moment of magnanimity, had made her a fake ID with his laminating machine and a Ramapo College badge. If you're wondering why her teenage friends were also at that bar, it's because he made all of them fake IDs too. Needless to say, I couldn't wait to escape to college, and not only because I had an awesome fake ID. It was an opportunity to reinvent myself, and I did. I became a registered Democrat, got a job at Urban Outfitters, and wore 2 different colored socks, experimented with magic mushrooms, and every other manner of trying to find yourself type stuff that the typical daughter of a Jewish Argentinian libertarian rageaholic militiaman might do. Because I felt so lost, I also became an alcoholic. But my slide into delinquency was slow because at my core, I was still a nice Jewish girl. It wasn't until I graduated and embarked on a 4-year journey to foreign lands that my recklessness came into full bloom. During a 2-year stint in Israel, I traveled repeatedly to Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, where I smoked hash openly in the desert. I hitchhiked my way through Jordan. I spent 6 months in Tokyo working as a hostess, like a non-sexual geisha, in a nightclub. I then switched to a strip club, where the money was better, and more importantly, the customers, who tended to be drunk and handsy, couldn't get near you as you were on stage. I only lasted 1 night, as the moment the cute Japanese DJ asked me how things were going, I broke down sobbing, "This isn't me." The truth is, I had no idea who I was. I did not connect any of these misadventures to my chaotic upbringing. I saw myself as fearless and adventurous, with a little bit of a death wish. I also had been voted most likely to become a starving writer in my high school yearbook. So as far as I was concerned, the things I was doing weren't just dangerous or unhealthy, they were material. I returned to the States, got a job as a secretary in a bank, and started writing freelance magazine articles on the side. A good friend of mine, an editor at Esquire, called me Story Laurie. Enthralled with my tales about my swashbuckling dad, he suggested I interview him for a possible personal essay. To my surprise, my father said, "Why not? I no longer plan to run for political office." Over the next 2 years, my father came to my apartment once a week to be interviewed on tape. The stories he told were just as colorful and exciting as they'd been in my childhood, except now I was an adult, and moreover, a journalist. Once I started to fact-check his claims, it all fell apart with breathtaking speed. His university degrees weren't real. He'd never set foot in Vietnam. I learned that he had been a professor at various universities, but he'd been teaching on false credentials. When I tracked down one of the deans who'd hired and then fired my father, he told me he hadn't warned other universities about him because I liked your dad. I didn't want to ruin his life. The more I looked, the more I found. He'd taken out credit cards in me and my sister's names. He'd stolen $350,000 from a Venezuelan businessman. Even our last name wasn't real. During our next interview, I ambushed my father with my questions. He said, "Laurie, you are walking into a minefield." I pressed on. "Are you doing something criminal? Does it involve the government?" "A little bit of both." "Dad, I spoke to the dean who hired you at Ramapo. Oh, him. He wanted me fired from the moment he found out I was a conservative. Uh-huh. Life is short, Dad. Who knows how many years you have left? Do you really want your legacy to be a pack of lies when the real you is far more interesting? I'll tell you who I really am. I am one of the most erudite, educated, and cultured men you will ever meet. I know people who have 5 PhDs who aren't as smart as I am. And if I wanted to, hija, so help me, I could end your writing career with a single phone call. Are you threatening me? He looked at me and slowly stirred his coffee. I closed my computer. He hadn't spoken to me since. Nearly 20 years later, my father and I are still estranged. He is now in his mid-80s, and if you can believe it, remains married to my mother. If you think your family is dysfunctional, come to one of my family reunions in New York, where my father pretends I don't exist and my mother acts like we're the Cleaver family. The last time I went to my parents' house was about a year ago, when my mother told me she needed to clear her attic of my childhood things. It was the first time I'd been there in 15 years. It was weird seeing my intimidating, larger-than-life dad at 85, looking frail and leaning on a cane. My son Teddy, who has a relationship with his grandparents, he sees them whenever we visit his cousins, and he FaceTimes with them frequently enough, decided he was going to start a cane collection. And my father presented him with a special one, made of polished mahogany and topped with a carved silver horse's head, which he explained was a gift from the American Archbishop Cardinal Edward Egan. Apparently, the two had kept each other company during their mutual convalescences at the Hospital for Special Surgery in Manhattan, when my dad was getting a hip replacement and Cardinal Egan was getting his knee replaced. While Teddy marveled over his new treasure, I was busy Googling, did Cardinal Egan get his knee replaced at the Hospital for Special Surgery in Manhattan? Naturally, he did, and now you understand the mindfuck that is, and always has been, my relationship with my dad. But time really is a healer. While I don't miss the lies and emotional abuse and financial wreckage he created in my life, I'm not angry at my dad anymore. Everything he did led to what I've accomplished today. I'm what you might call a situational life bloomer. Someone whose normal life milestones were put on hold in order to work through decades of complicated feelings. I had my son on my own at 42 with an anonymous sperm donor. I got married for the first time at 48 to a wonderful man I met 9 months after Teddy was born. He adopted my son and gave him 4 older siblings, my amazing stepkids. And through Facebook and friendships with people who've had, let's say, more standard upbringings, I crowdsourced my way to some semblance of normalcy. I probably won't fix things with my dad before he shuffles off this mortal coil. He doesn't want to, and I don't need to. My son Teddy adores his grandpa, and that's fine with me. Teddy is 10. He doesn't need to know all the details yet. I just tell him, don't give Grandpa your Social Security number.
Laurie Sandell! Awesome! How much do I love a Temple Israel audience? She's telling all these stories. Oh, this, and the fact that the mother stayed. My mother, they're still married. Okay, so this next reader, this is a callback. This is the number 3 Really God show that has been lucky to have this next reader. He's very accomplished and he's working on a book, second book. So please welcome David Weissman.
Sorry.
If you haven't been to Century West BMW in North Hollywood on a Tuesday morning, I highly recommend it. They'll make you a latte or an espresso, and if you get there early enough, they have fresh Krispy Kreme. But when I found myself there in the winter of 2004, it wasn't to eat donuts. I was there to buy a tank, or rather the 2004 model year equivalent, a BMW X5 sports activity vehicle. This thing was a beast, weighing in at over 5,000 pounds, but with the acceleration and stopping distance of a Porsche. It had electronic rollover protection, steel-reinforced crumple zones, and 5-star crash ratings. If you were a crash test dummy circa 2004, this was the car you wanted to be working in. Yes, it got 9 miles to the gallon, but who cared? Global warming was barely a blip on our radar back then. Worries about anthrax being sent through the mail were all the rage. Best of all, when you slammed the X5's door shut, it made a thunk that felt like you were sealing yourself inside a rocket ship. This thunk was a sensation to the ears. It produced a profound sense of isolation and protection. Did BMW operate slave labor camps and manufacture armaments that contributed to the murder of my grandparents in the Holocaust? Yes, they did. But that thunk, my God. The price was prodigious, but tanks aren't cheap. Just ask Congress. I wanted to negotiate, really I did. But to do that, you had to be prepared to walk away. And there was no way I was walking away from this monster. To the salesman's credit, he didn't fleece me, he merely gouged me. This car was impregnable, which was exactly the point because my wife Diane, it turns out, was highly pregnable. We'd become parents 18 months earlier, and little Ike was the apple of our eye. I never wanted to drive a tank until I became a parent. I was against tanks. We all were. America was at war back then, and we didn't like it one bit. When we'd bought our first new parent car 6 months before Ike was born, I'd given some thought to an SUV, but it was from a practicality point of view. We were going to have strollers and diapers from Costco, and maybe we'd need the extra room. But Diane had wanted a station wagon, a sort of retro mom chic choice, and I'd learned never to doubt her when it came to anything style-related. So we went with the BMW 5 Series station wagon in a soft blue, and that was the car we drove Ike home from the hospital in 3 days after he was born. It was a great car, the kind of car you'd name Mabel or Tessa, a stylish urban getabout. But 18 months into this parent thing, I was no longer interested in a car, certainly not one with a lady name. I wanted a fortress, a vehicle with a name like Otto or Hans. I'd bought a lot of different cars by the time I turned 38 for a lot of different reasons, style, performance, economy. But 2004 was the first time I bought a car entirely because of safety. Driving home behind the wheel of this Leviathan was a revelation. I felt like I could plow through all the little Hyundais and Toyotas ahead of me, but I didn't, because I didn't want to be that kind of dad. But if anyone ever pushed me, even a little, ramming speed. I loved this car. I loved it because it made me feel like whoever was inside was safe and coddled. I loved it because it was a validation that I was doing everything I could to protect my family. This car screamed Dad of the Year, and unlike an Oscar, I actually had a chance at that award. I couldn't wait to put Ike in the back, but first I had to install the car seat. If you've never done this before, I don't recommend. It takes a small amount of intelligence and a large amount of brute strength, an inversion in capability that I'd faced all my life. But I was keen to master all things related to child safety in our new fortress on wheels, so I did the installation, and if I do say so myself, it was masterful. I'm not gonna lie, parenthood had been going very, very well. Diane and I were kind of hitting it out of the park. Ike was super cute. He'd hit all the milestones, right on schedule, sitting up, crawling, walking, solid foods. At this rate, the Ivy League was a lock. Then one day, Diane came to me with the current New Yorker magazine in hand and a stricken look on her face. "Did you read this article about autism?" Of course I'd read that article. I'd read every article in that issue, all while holding my sleeping child in my arms. I told you I was nailing it. They're describing Ike. What? No, I hadn't gotten that at all. And I'd read the article pretty carefully. In fact, I took comfort in it. The kind of comfort you take when you hear about somebody else's calamity that you're not facing. I'm pretty sure there's a German word for that. But as Diane read it back to me, I had to admit that a couple of the communication issues they were describing sounded a lot like Ike. His first word had been duck, which was odd but could have been a sign of future ornithological interest. He didn't say mama or dada, but why would he need to? We were literally always there for him. He was prone to tantrums, but this was LA. Who wasn't? He's fine. We're awesome, I thought. But it was clear to Diane that Ike was trying to communicate with us, and there was something going on inside his brain that was frustrating him in that effort. I reluctantly agreed to an evaluation. Not a formal thing in some cold institutional setting, but an expert that comes to your house and sits with your baby. Like a play date, but one that costs $1,500. The answer was so typical of all the panic-inducing non-answer answers we would get over the next 5 years. Ike was likely on the spectrum. It was too early to say for sure where. We had to wait and see. That's your idea of a diagnosis? Where did you go to medical school? Hampshire College? Just tell us, am I right or is Diane right? I wanted certainty. I wanted guarantees. I wanted something ironclad like my X5. It was just enough of a diagnosis to validate Diane's worst fears, and not enough of one to alter my genetic predisposition to denial. As Ike got older, though, he got worse. His language acquisition lagged way behind his peers. His tantrums intensified. He developed recidivist behaviors. Staring at fans was a big one, but opening and closing sliding doors was his #1 source of fun. I'll never forget going to a birthday party for his cousin, and all the cute little toddlers are running around and playing with each other, and Ike is in my sister-in-law's bedroom, opening and closing her sliding closet door over and over again for 2 full hours. Eventually, we found a picture book with sliding panels, so at least he could sit quietly doing his thing instead of spending all of his time in our friends' master bedroom closets. Soon, Ike developed an obsession with buses. In a fit of misguided ambition, we took him on a trip to Disney World when he was 3, figuring maybe he'd like the rides. We spent the entire vacation riding back and forth on the buses to and from the parks. Disney provided this transportation for free, so in retrospect, it may have been a mistake to pre-purchase the 5-day deluxe park hopper passes. My Sunday afternoons at home were usually spent taking Ike on the LA Metro bus from the stop at 3rd and Larchmont to the end of the line at Cedars-Sinai, where nearly every passenger on the bus except for us was visiting some deathly ill patient at the hospital or, in quite a few cases, taking themselves to the emergency room the hard way. It was the LA version of the Voyage of the Damned, so the Disney World transportation system was actually a nice change of pace. Eventually, Ike graduated from buses to trains, and our weekends became all about taking the Gold Line from Union Station to South Pasadena, where there was a sandwich shop that made the best tuna salad in Southern California. Turns out tuna salad was the exact nexus between my obsessions and Ike's. And the most galling thing of all, the kid was obsessed with practically every mode of transportation except the glorious navy blue BMW X5 we had sitting in the driveway. I remember the low point quite distinctly. The fact that it happened in my precious X5, only adding insult to injury. We had friends visiting from out of town. They had 2 perfectly behaved little boys around Ike's age. I was driving the dad and the boys to another friend's house, and Ike's sliding panel book fell into the crevice between the back seat and the back door. Ike tried in the only way he could to communicate that the thing he turned to for comfort was no longer in his possession. Unfortunately, that mode of communication was an epic tantrum the likes of which this other dad had clearly never seen or heard. He was a good guy, but he was now staring at me with the exact same look on his face that I had when I first read that New Yorker article. It said, "Thank God my boys aren't like this." I knew that if I could just reach back and get that fucking sliding panel book, Ike would be comforted. But we were on the freeway and there was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could do. I felt completely and utterly vulnerable. And there it was. In the heart of my fortress of protection, I realized that there was no such thing as protection at all. That all these glorious crumple zones and gleaming steel-reinforced panels were practically useless at keeping my child safe because the thing that threatened him most was inside his own brain. I'd been wrong about everything. My sense of what it meant to be a father when I bought this tank was about as accurate as my sense of direction in the pre-Google Maps days. I should have negotiated on the price. Parenthood is a partnership. It turns out that the thing I was best at was public transportation, and the thing Diane was best at was actual intervention into Ike's well-being. She took him to speech therapy, occupational therapy, and therapy. She made sure that he had play dates with kids who were most like him and play dates with kids who were nothing like him. She got him every evaluation and intervention that could make a difference in his life, and it made a huge difference. Still, that tuna salad was pretty spectacular, so who really is the better parent? Ike still had his quirks. He'd memorized the entire Metrolink train schedule by the time he was 6, but his obsession with trains eventually dropped away to be replaced by a total and complete obsession with sports, which is the definition of normal in America, so no one had to spend any more time in any master bedroom closets. Ultimately, Ike turned into a fairly typical boy, bright, inquisitive, a little obsessive, maybe not the most emotionally communicative, but a total delight to converse with. It was me who was permanently altered. They say you're only as happy as your least happy child, but for me it was a corollary that rang true. I was only as safe as my least safe child. I'd staked everything I had on being the daddy protector, and I'd done it behind the wheel of a 5,000-pound automotive behemoth named Hans. But the lesson I learned about fatherhood was simply that any conception of safety I'd had before Diane got pregnant was a permanent figure of the past. No matter how cautious I was, I'd never have that carefree feeling ever again. I remember the day we traded the X5 in for a nice sedan, Ike and now a baby Orrin with me, hearing that glorious thunk of the door closing one last time. Oh well. Longing for certainty, I turned to my boys. Who wants some tuna salad sandwiches?
David Weissman, so beautiful. All right. Thank you for hanging in there, have food and drink, and we're gonna keep going. This next young woman is new to the Really God stage, if you will, and new to a few other things you're gonna find out. So please welcome Meredith DeSantos.
I come from a lineage of Lutheran ministers that dates back to Martin Luther himself, and I'm also Greek Orthodox. I've been baptized in both churches. My mom's born-again sister would tell me the devil was inside me when I'd eat a cookie before dinner. When I was 10, I experienced some of the church's greatest hits. I was told challenging my Sunday school teacher would give me a one-way ticket to hell. Then I wore a white dress to my confirmation, like some weird child bride for Jesus. And then I was abused by a family member who became a priest. Needless to say, Christianity was confusing as a kid. When I was 20, I was trapped in an airport with that devil-fearing aunt, waiting for my mom's delayed flight. She decided to fill the silence by telling me how I could re-virginize myself through the Spirit of Jesus. Here are the steps of re-virginization. 1, lie in a bed in a white nightgown. 2, say out loud, I recommit my virginity to the soul of Jesus. And 3, say out loud, I allow Jesus' soul to enter my body, where it may remain until I marry a virgin Christian. Growing up in Boston, I had a ton of Jewish friends. I loved their families. No one told me the devil was inside me when I stuffed my face with Rigala before dinner. And no one gave me an exorcist style of the birds and the bees. I thought my Jewish friends had it going on. I always wanted to open the door for Elijah at Passover, and the fact that they got presents 8 nights in a row was way better than Christmas. I thought, where do I sign to become Jewish? So I'm 15, and my mom and I are creating the North Star out of Christmas lights on a big window 60 feet above the snowy ground when I turn to her and say, Mom, I'm going to marry someone Jewish. That way we can have Christmas and Hanukkah. The greatest life hack to endless joy. My mom smiles. Before she could answer, my dad yells at us from below, Jesus Christ, ma, what have you done? I had unintentionally created the Star of David. Cut to 17 years later, and I find my Jewish boyfriend. Jackpot, dreams do really come true. As soon as I met David, after he left, I called my mom and said, I met my husband. And in true mom form, she asked, okay, what does he do? And I said, I don't know, maybe he's a director, but he's definitely not an actor. A week later, David called. I knew he was going to ask me out on a date. We had been texting every day. It was bound to happen. I waited with bated breath as he said the words, would you like to attend my play in Glendale? An actor? My greatest LA fear had come true. Okay, I was in the agent trainee program in my 20s at Innovative Artists, and that scared me for life. I had to tell multiple actors daily, no, I don't think your girlfriend will cheat on you in X movie with X actor. Or, yes, you're as good looking as Chris Hemsworth. No, he wasn't. Sure, I can look like a crazy person in Venice and read lines with you all day Saturday for no money, because the energy of the boardwalk feeds your process. During this same time, my boss started a rumor that I was impregnated by a client, by that same indie darling who made me compare him daily to Chris Hemsworth. His response, she can't be pregnant because I haven't had sex with her yet. Only he used some more colorful words. The rumor continued until one day I refused to pick up 10 boxes delivered to my boss because I was with child. As a dig, I dressed up as her for Halloween. She loved it because agents are crazy narcissists. Not anyone here, of course. Anyway, after I escaped that insanity, I vowed to never date an actor. Actors are nuts. So finding out the man I was going to marry was an actor knocked the wind out of my sails. Frankly, I didn't know what was worse, the fact that he was an actor or he asked me to go to Glendale. That Saturday night, I dragged my sister to the Antaeus Theater to see if David was a good actor or not. Turns out he was really good. Fine, I'll bend my rule for a working actor who doesn't look anything like Chris Hemsworth. 2 years, 1 play, and 5 shows that I never watched him in later. We were planning our wedding. My Greek Orthodox dad freaked out when he heard we had a friend officiating the wedding. He said we had to have a religious figure or he wasn't paying for it. I told David that I wanted a cool rabbi for our wedding. We'd have a reform ceremony with all the bells and whistles. He agreed. We met Rabbi Sadie Becker, who studied in Los Angeles and knows Rabbi Mari. Small world. When my dad heard a rabbi was leading the ceremony, he said, I didn't mean that religious figure. In the end, my Greek Orthodox family fell in love with Judaism, and the ceremony is still their favorite part of our wedding. Remember my life hack of endless joy by marrying someone Jewish? It was all working in my favor until we found out we were pregnant and had the big discussion. What is our family's identity going to be? I wanted it to be unified, not mom believes in the resurrection of Christ and dad believes gefilte fish tastes good. That seemed like a divorce waiting to happen. Plus, I lost faith in my religion when my uncle wanted to divorce my aunt but still go to heaven. The church agreed to annul his marriage of 30 years if he paid for a new wing of the church. Thrilled, heaven will accept his cheating ass with warm arms. So not only did I reach my childhood goals of marrying someone Jewish, but I decided to say goodbye to my crazy extended family and become a part of a culture that has always been accepting of me in really every walk of life. Immediately, I entered into countless hours of Jewish history courses and conversion classes. I cringed when I learned Hanukkah was the result of Greek oppression. The priest left that out of the Sunday school lessons. And cried when I heard firsthand accounts of the Holocaust. Jewish people have been fighting for their right to live for thousands of years. A month after giving birth to our son, I met with the Beit Din over Zoom, and I let go of my perfect student attitude and told personal stories of why I'm connected to the many facets of Judaism. I'll never forget Rabbi Stephen Carr Rubin said, "From everything we've heard, you're already Jewish." God. I guess living through decades of trauma and wearing out countless therapists means you're a Jew. A week later, I emerged from a stunning mikveh ceremony where one of my closest friends was able to serve as witness to my conversion along with my husband and mom. By the way, if anyone is pregnant, run to the mikveh. It was heavenly being buoyant for 20 minutes. I also waddled in front of the Temple Israel Hollywood congregation, looking like I was going to give birth any moment, and held the Torah as they said in unison that I was accepted into Judaism and that they would stand by me throughout everything and anything. I said the same back to them. They meant it, I meant it. That was 5 months ago. Since then, anti-Semitism has gone up 1,000% online. The playground near us was tagged with "Zionism is terrorism." A Jewish house next door to my friend in the valley was tagged with swastikas. My husband's friend of 13 years is spreading Hamas propaganda and calling Jewish women sadistic psycho bitches. Needless to say, he and David are no longer friends after I gave him a piece of my mind. Poor David hadn't seen my Greek blood and inner Boston gangster combine forces and come out until October 8th when I got in fights with online bots, strangers, and that one former friend. When I try to educate people on the state of the world, they say, "Wow, you're really Jewish now." Or I get an anti-Semitic response. My Jewish friends absolutely love it. They clap for me when I see them in person and say, "You chose a hell of a time to become Jewish." Family friends tell me to be silent because they're scared. I feel like I am on fire because this is the first time in my life where my culture and identity that I'm a part of is under attack. I knew that I was privileged because I was white and from a well-to-do family in Boston, but I didn't appreciate that my Christianity gave me another level of privilege. I do find myself asking, can I speak out against these horrors? Am I Jewish enough? Do I need to be Jewish longer? The fact is, even if I wasn't Jewish, I would be standing up for my Jewish friends in Israel. But I would have the privilege of not getting anti-Semitic rhetoric spewed at me. I'd be privileged enough to not get called Zionist, which, by the way, is the dopest thing to be called. I also would have the privilege of not being afraid that someone will come up to our front door, which has a mezuzah, and target us. I also would have the privilege of not telling my nanny, "Don't say he's Jewish if anyone asks at the park." I'm experiencing what every generation of Jewish people has gone through, and not even the worst of it. I'm experiencing what my childhood friends endured in Boston, but never told me about, or I was too blind to see it. The level of empathy and compassion I've been able to access by becoming Jewish has changed me forever. When I was a teen, I was in it for the rugula and the joy of 8 nights of presents. Little did I know that it would come with all of this. I should be running for the hills, yet strangely, I've never felt more confident in a decision that I've made. Well, except for that one time I agreed to see an actor's play in Glendale. That was a good one, too.
Meredith DeSantos! Fantastic! All right, so I'm thinking, oh, who's the right person to follow the beautiful convert? Oh, I'll throw myself there. Okay. I'm taking David on the road. Okay, here we go. July 20th, 2007, Gideon David Modisett, my second son, is born. He has white blonde hair and long, skinny limbs. Look at my Paul Bettany love child, I say to a nurse who doesn't laugh. Gideon's cry is so fierce, so penetrating that there is no doubt that if the last 2 years spent trying to have him have been a series of dreams, many of them nightmares, I am finally joyfully awake. I watch him on the table being cleaned up calmly, a completely different experience than when my 4-year-old was born. With him, I went into labor, my water broke, and then I never dilated. I know that's a lot of information, but it's like a key plot point. After his heart started failing for the 3rd time, I turned to the nurse and I asked, if this was 100 years ago, what would happen? And she said, one of you would die. Cut me open, my dear. I was so out of my mind when I finally saw Gabriel that when they took him away to freshen him up, I started screaming, give me my baby, give me my baby, he needs his mother. It was hysterical and irrational, and Todd took pictures of it. I do no screaming when I see Gideon. I lie calmly but eagerly, a well-mannered girl letting other people play with a doll I know is going home with me. Todd hands him to me. He rests on my chest. I feel him breathe. He feels my heart. Birth never gets old. Amazing. With the scheduled C-section, there aren't many surprises. Since Gabriel's birth had been so traumatic, we were advised to have another C-section to minimize the drama with the second baby. Even though I love drama, I agreed. They said it was better for the baby, so who needed to be a hero? Oh. See, I really do need reading glasses. Who needed to be a hero? Where is page? This is terrible. Oh, 12:20 p.m. Yes, that's my own writing. Okay, my best friend of 15 years sits on the end of my bed at Cedars. Catherine threw dirt on my father's grave with me, so it's nice to be together for new life. I'm so relieved, I tell her, glancing toward the lucite box where Gideon rests peacefully, all wrapped up. You just never know, I say, out loud, but I finish the thought in my mind with IVF, which we heard about earlier. In vitro fertilization. I did in vitro fertilization to have this baby, and if you don't still know what that is, turn to someone next to you. It's Southern California. Luckily, it was my egg and my sperm, so known quantities were used, but you always wonder, at least I did, am I forcing the hand of God? Is something going to go wrong? Am I going to be punished somehow for doing everything else in life twice and then realizing how much I loved being a mother? But the answer is no. Here he is, right by my side. I've never seen such a chill baby, Catherine says. 12:24 p.m. I shouldn't eat this. Muffins are really just cake, my mother says, picking the top off a bran muffin. A nurse walks in, takes my temperature, looks at the baby, and heads for the door. Then she stops herself and walks a few steps back to the bassinet without saying a word. She starts to wheel it into the hall. Excuse me, is everything okay? Where are you going? I ask. Just checking, his color's a little off. It's probably just the lighting. I'm gonna check him in the hall. She's a very sweet woman, but I'm defensive. What? What? Todd? Todd? I interrupt Todd talking to his father about the American Civil War. No, I'm not kidding, the Battle of Vicksburg. Todd, can you see what's up here? Now the nurse is pushing the bassinet away toward the nursery. Todd follows her. It's probably nothing, y'all, Catherine says, slipping into her southern native drawl, signaling she's as nervous as I am. You know, they have to be extra careful the way insurance works these days. What? What are they being careful about? He's fine, right? I asked my mother and my father-in-law, who is now reading the LA Times. Oh, I'm sure all is fine, y'all, Catherine continues. Want me to check? Yes, my chest tightens. A directional mirror hangs right outside the door to my room, so you can see people coming down 2 intersecting hallways. 10 minutes that pass like an hour later, Catherine is back. He's fine, y'all. There's just a little problem with oxygen. He's not getting enough oxygen. They have him hooked up to a machine now that gives him extra oxygen, so he's fine. I look in the mirror over her head and see a swarm of people heading toward the room. Todd, another friend who just showed up, and a man I've never seen before in hospital scrubs. Everyone pours into the room around the bed. The man in the scrubs pulls up a chair. He adjusts his glasses on his nose and leans back, perching his foot on my bed. He's like a caricature, like he's about to say, "Watch me work." But he doesn't. Oh my gosh. I am Dr. Vanderhoff. I am the head of neonatal intensive care unit. He has a Norwegian or Swedish accent. Now I really don't like him because it sounds German to me. Okay, I say, swallowing hard, thinking neonatal intensive care unit. What the fuck is this? We have a situation here with, what's the baby's name? Gideon. Everyone in unison. Everyone in the room says in unison. Gideon, yeah. The situation is that he is not getting enough oxygen into his lungs. We don't know what's going on, so we have to run a series of tests, repeatedly, of course, because it could be transitional, but our fear in a certain scenario is that there is a hole in his heart or his lung. There could be a hole in one of the chambers. My head snaps away from him and falls down on my chest. I can't hold it up from the weight of what I'm hearing. This is not happening, this is not happening, this is not. But by the third time I think of this, and I haven't woken up, I know that it is, and I can't stop crying. I feel like those Greek tragedy women, the ones who fall to the ground and rip out their eyes and wail. With a highly specialized lack of compassion, Vanderhoff carries on. There are scenarios also where children are born with infections in their lungs that can be lethal, which it could be. Of course, we do not know, but it could be moving into the spinal area and causing meningitis. So we would need to do a spinal tap. But we don't know. Those things move quickly in infants. We need to keep the child under observation. These sorts of problems have a tendency to move rapidly in a one-day-old child. But we don't know because, as you know, we haven't run the tests. And Todd shoots up out of his chair, a red-headed geyser. He leans his body over mine and gets right in Dr. Vanderhoff's face. Well, we haven't seen the blood work. And this situation, shoot. No, it's not a glasses issue. It's that I'm fucking different pages. I'm sorry. Talk about ruining a fucking joke. All right. Okay, Todd. Doctor, if you don't know, then stop upsetting my wife and get the fuck out of here and run your fucking tests. Todd will tell you that he didn't say fuck, but that's how I remember it. Dr. Vanderhoff pauses and then, not to be denied his moment, finishes his thought. The mother has to know these things because I need her consent. If something happens upstairs, I need her consent to immediately perform an operation on the child. Of course, we don't know if this will be the case. And then Todd and his father employ their extensive knowledge of military tactics and physically escort Dr. Vanderhoff out of the room. 12:50 p.m., Gideon is taken upstairs to the NICU. As soon as I can get myself in a wheelchair and go see him. As soon as I can, I get myself in a wheelchair and go see him. He is in the back corner of Base 6. He appears tiny to my eyes and terrified. I am self-conscious, wondering if the nurses and Todd and my friends can detect my longing to touch him, to hold him close to me. Reaching 2 latex fingers into the airtight box where he is being kept, he feels more like an animatronic figure with wires than my son, a haunting marionette that I am supposed to protect and can't. Encased in plexiglass, does he even know I'm here, that I'm his mother and I love him? Miss Klein, it's probably best if you go get some rest, the nurse says. 10:30 p.m. All of Gideon's tests have come back negative. The only results we don't have yet are the blood work. We run into Vanderhoff in the NICU. Looks good, I say from the wheelchair. He pulls up a chair next to me. Well, we haven't seen the blood work yet, but this situation is not uncommon in C-section babies, since the lungs being fully mature is what signals the body to go into labor, of course. Wait, what? Of course, excess fluid is naturally squeezed out of the lungs during... What? What? Nobody told me that, I say to Todd. So we still really can't rule out a spinal tap and blood transfusions if it's meningitis, which of course it could be. Todd wheels me away. So much for the risk-free C-section. I go back in my room, lay down, and close my eyes. All I can see are tiny wires and gauze-wrapped feet. I doze for a while and wake up with a start right. I'm in a hospital. I've had a baby. He's in ICU. 2 a.m., I hoist myself out of my bed, back into the wheelchair, and wheel myself out in the hall. Can I help you? A nurse asks, mystified by my presence. My baby, he's in ICU. Sure, the nurse says, go ahead. Back upstairs, Gideon doesn't look any bigger, any happier, any more safe than he did earlier. Again, I stick my 2 fingers in and rub the smallest human stomach I can imagine until I look to my right and see a 2.5-pound baby being fed by his mother, a woman who I come to find out has been here every day for the past month. I look back at Gideon, who at a normal weight now looks like Paul Bunyan. The nurse moves across the floor. The nurses move across the floor with graceful precision. How do they do this job and not end up in a corner drooling? The pressure is insane. I'm so grateful for them. If you told me I could find an ounce of gratitude with a baby in intensive care, I would have told you it's impossible. But in this moment, I do. I know I am one of the lucky ones. 6 p.m. I've had no sleep, but Gideon's progress is good. The blood tests come back normal. Take that, Dr. Vanderdoom. He is moved out of the NICU. By the way, Vanderdoom, fired. Okay, sidebar. He's not at Cedars anymore, that guy. Okay, Gideon is moved out of the NICU 36 hours later. He still has to spend time in the maternity nursery instead of my room, but he's breathing on his own, and I can see him whenever I want. He is out of danger. Our pediatrician stops by and says, "You won't remember any of this once you get him home. It's just like a bad dream." No, I don't remember every single detail you all just heard. 2 days later, Gideon is released to come home. It feels triumphant to leave the hospital with a baby this time, not just a matter of course. My arms are wrapped tightly around him, wrapped tightly in the hospital's blue and white striped blanket, and I start to feel like Gideon's mother. That's it. Thank you. Thank you. And Gideon is actually here. He's 16 and he needs a job. Okay. Okay, this next gentleman, this is a complete surprise and gift. This gentleman and I have worked together for 15 years. He is a master. Ooh, I'm not going to oversell. He's lovely, and has an extensive resume that is in your program. And my heart to Dan Bucatinsky.
Thanks, Dani. I hope I can see. That's really the only thing I'm stressed about. Kidding. I'm stressed about everything. All right. Can we raise this a tiny bit? No, we can't. Okay. That's all right.
No, you should be able to.
Yeah? Because I'm blind as a bat, as it turns out. So high maintenance. So high maintenance. Okay. Oh, that's so much better. So much better. You have no idea. I can see all the things that are. I want to be a model. Yep. You heard me correctly. Those were the words my 16-year-old son Jonah said to me a few months ago. Now, what happened after that is important because it shows an enormous amount of growth on my part. As a parent, as a man, as someone who at age 8 pretended to walk the runway wrapped in a persimmon-hued bath sheet to imaginary flashbulbs at an imaginary Met Gala, so naturally, the old me wanted to jump into action. Take charge, shop for couture and book photo shoots, walk him into agencies like Terry Shields did for Brooke all those years ago. But I'm not that kind of dad anymore. I've learned, yes, that's the kind of dad I was for so many years, on high alert, in the driver's seat, taking charge. But after therapy, parent Al-Anon, and parent coaching sessions, I've learned to accept my powerlessness. I'm not responsible for everything. Let the universe take charge. Whatever happens, happens. My only job is to love unconditionally and to listen. Let my son guide this journey. Let him tell me why he, who's always been driven to all things military, whose passion project at school this year is to build an AK-47 out of plywood and rubber bands, who studies Russian warplanes and tanks in his spare time, and not because he knows my grandparents escaped there in the 1930s to avoid Jewish persecution. Let him tell me why he wants to be a model. Okay. 2 reasons, he says. 1, he heard it pays $600 an hour minimum. And 2, he heard it's super easy. Okay, that's his truth. I can hold space for that. It's not my job to tell him what I think any more than it's my job to discourage him from a career as a sniper. Who was I to talk him out of a career in front of the camera? Me, of all people, whose childhood damage drove me to do whatever it took to get in front of as many cameras as possible. No, I was going to support him with calm, low-stakes resolve, move forward a step at a time, letting him lead. He reminded me that an old school friend's mom and neighbor of ours is an acclaimed fashion photographer, and maybe should give him some advice. Great idea, I said, calmly. Want to give her a call? Or I could, or not, totally up to you. Jonah had me call, and she encouraged us to come over one Saturday in September to talk and maybe shoot a few photos of him. Great. Letting Jonah take the lead, we pick a few outfits and shoes, and I dig out some cover stick in case in case he wants to touch up any last-minute breakouts. When we get to the house, I suggest, hey, you know what, Jonah? I'll just hang back in the kitchen, letting go, so the photographer and Jonah can develop a trust, a rapport. I know how this chemistry is crucial to a successful shoot. I mean, I've been photographed a few times myself. The old me would have never hung back. No, the old me would go in there, pitch some ideas, and make sure, that there isn't a stray hair in his eye or anything. The old me would hope that maybe a father-son shot or two. But no, this isn't about me. This time I'm staying in my own lane. I am chill and hanging out in the kitchen. My photographer friend pulls out a bottle of rosé and a glass. Help yourself, she says, and off they go. Well, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm not an it's 5 o'clock somewhere kind of guy. Or I wasn't before, but this is the new me after all. Letting go and letting loose feels good. I pour myself a half glass and I do Wordle. I enter the letters M-O-D-E-L. Model. Wouldn't that be insane if the universe gives it to me on the first guess? I mean, like its way of telling me it likes this version of me and I'm handling things exactly right. I hit submit, and that's not the word. Okay, that's okay too, because I'm cool. I pour myself another glass and I keep wordling. An hour goes by. My normally shy, brooding teen emerges with my friend, laughing and buzzing about the fun they've just had. I'm genuinely happy for Jonah. I mean, he seems confident and giddy. He's a natural, she says. He beams. I'm feeling a little verklempt, you know? I mean, maybe this whole experience will actually be good for him and for me. When I step back, good things happen. I didn't control anything. I wasn't responsible for what happened, and it gave him the freedom to find his own way. Maybe he does have a modeling career ahead of him, something that'll actually take his mind off that Call of Duty, the one on Xbox and his own personal one. Not that I have anything to say about it or do with it. That's his journey. When we get home, my husband Don, Jonah, and I have a quick dinner before Don takes Jonah to his volleyball practice. It's the three of us these days, since my daughter's just 2 weeks into a gap year semester in Ireland. We boys are left to hold down the fort and take care of our cat, 2 dogs, and my daughter's bird. They leave for practice, and I feel this rare wave of exhaustion, which I could attribute to the afternoon rosé, but I think learning how to let go of the wheel and let good things happen without having to drive all the time has had a calming effect on me. Maybe that's why I'm so relaxed. I decided to take the bird Kermit out of his cage and let him sit on my shoulder while I lay down on the sofa for a while. Kermit and I have bonded since my daughter left, and I'm becoming fond of this little guy. I was never a bird person before. Who is really? But everything we'd learned on the internet about the green-cheeked conure seems to be true. They're smart, affectionate, and bond to people quite easily. He seems to really like me. I take out my iPhone and play some conure calls from YouTube to see how he would react. He sings loudly to the videos, and I laugh because, I don't know, I'm letting the universe just happen. Well, that's the last thing I remember. Because sometime later, I wake up on the couch in the kitchen, disoriented. I'm totally out of it. Sure, I'm workshopping my whole new chill persona, but this is a next level kind of relaxation. I hop up and head for my office to pay some bills. I mean, snap me out of it. Nothing like looking at how much money you've spent after months of not just one strike, but two strikes to wake a guy up. Wow, it's an unusually high visa bill. So many extra supplies we bought before my daughter headed to Ireland. Luggage, sweaters, and bird food. Bird food. Oh, God, that reminds me of Kermit. I should go feed him. I head for the kitchen, now dark as the sun has just gone down. I turn on the lights and walk towards the bird cage next to the couch where I've just been hanging out with him and fell asleep. The cage door is locked. Good, he's safe. But where is he? I look inside, but he's not there. But why would the door be closed if Kermit weren't inside? My heart starts to pound. Kermit, where are you? I look around the floor, the mantle, the counters. Where the hell is Kermit? My dogs, Scout and Robbie, sense the agitation and they jump up from their slumber. Guys, where's Kermit? I ask as I anxiously look around the house. I call my husband and ask, how close are you to getting home? I am now frantic. Don later tells me he heard that tone in my voice and thought Eliza had died. I can't find Kermit, I say, my voice no longer chill at all. You have to come home and help me look. 5 minutes later, Jonah and Don burst through the kitchen door. I can't find him anywhere. We all look towards our shepherd husky mix. Scout, where is Kermit? Did you take him? Jonah, sensing foul play, puts Scout in her crate, just in case. Maybe he flew outside, Don said. But how? Through the doggy door? There aren't any windows open. We head outside with our iPhone flashlights illuminated. They're so handy, right? I mean, they got a lot right, those iPhone people. We spread out and beam our lights in various corners of the yard. Kermit, I call out, as if he ever responded to his name. I mean, he's not a dog, right? And then, I see it. A big blue feather. I gasp. And then I see another. A cluster of like 3 or 4 in the yard, where clearly something has gotten to him. Something by the name of Scout. Oh, God. No. I can't explain it to you, but I just fall to my knees like a Greek widow, like the girl in the Kent State photo. I burst into tears. The thought of Kermit's final moments and how they could have been avoided, and the pain that this news is going to inflict on my poor daughter thousands of miles away. All of those thoughts simultaneously slam into my brain like a tsunami. My own love for this bird and my grief eclipsed by the guilt at having allowed such a thing to happen. And the only request my daughter made of me before she left for Ireland, take care of Kermit. Take care of Kermit. I had taken my eyes off the road, my hands off the wheel, and whatever other driving analogy you can think of. That means I had fucking killed my baby's baby. I look up at the heavens utterly betrayed. Fuck chill. Fuck letting God be my fucking co-pilot. He sucks at it. No offense. And fuck letting the universe happen. The universe is a whore. And you know what? Fuck wine. Ugh, the wine. My inner voice shouts at me, this is your bottom. You have a drinking problem, and this is the result. I know. 2 half glasses of rosé on one random Sunday afternoon isn't exactly a cause for an intervention. But in this moment, I am overcome. If I promise I'll never drink again, will Kermit suddenly fly onto my shoulder and say, fooled ya? But conures don't talk. They just chirp and shit and look appetizing to dogs. I bury my head in my hands and I just ugly scream, cry in despair, a cross between Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween and Meryl and Sophie's Choice. I know, I'm right there with you. I was in full tilt drama queen mode. I tell myself, come on, man, it's just a bird, pull yourself together. But I'm telling you, I wasn't putting it on. It was coming from deep, deep within me. It's real. And I can't seem to pick myself up. Don keeps saying, could have happened to any of us. Seriously, it's not your fault. It was the dog. But it's Jonah, God bless him, fresh from his confidence-boosting performance at the photo shoot, who pulls me up to say, Daniel, he calls me Daniel. Maybe it makes him feel cool or older, or really he's just embarrassed that I'm his dad, so he doesn't want to call me dad. Daniel, you have to let it go. It was a human error. And Don repeats, well, it was the dog. And Jonah looks me square in the eyes and says, it was a human mistake. Now put it behind you, don't dwell on the past, you can only live in the present. And I'm surprised and impressed, and sure, I would love it for him to stop saying human mistake. I mean, Scout ate him and not me. But Jonah is right. He's telling the truth. And in that moment, I know he will tell that same truth to my daughter. No, I have got to get there first. So for the next day, Don and I torture over what to say to her and how to say it. We even write a script. Right before the call, we comfort ourselves. I mean, surely she's going to take this better than we fear, right? Wrong. She screams, much like I did, and hangs up on us. So I go right back to being the old me. Powerful, responsible, in control me. The me that has brought me such happiness in life, sort of. I become maniacal in my attempts at repair. I send texts, just checking in, just want to say I love you, just want to tell you how sorry we are. No response. I start sending Amazon UK packages, one after the other. Look at this stuffed animal, isn't it cute? No thoughts on how she'd fly back from Ireland with a giant life-sized stuffed bird. A bird, I know, too soon. Then bath salts, face masks, markers, slime, and candy. Oh, and a selfie stick. Why? Unlike Jonah, my daughter hates photos of herself. The last thing this girl could ever want is a device designed for her to capture her image. But I make sure that box arrives the next day, and another one after that, and another after that. I am gonna Amazon Prime my way out of this. I am back in the driver's seat, baby. But all Eliza wants is to come home. And we say no. There is no good that will come from her abandoning her program to come home. Nothing will bring that bird back. But she is depressed, understandably, and I can't stop blaming myself for it. So, of course, I say yes when the program director recommends she get an emotional support puppy. I am mad at myself for not being the one who suggested it. Did my new chill persona dull my brain? His name is Twinkie, and it works. She stays in Ireland till the end of the program, and it costs me 6 times what it costs for a human to get it back to Los Angeles. And I'm now doing a lot of the walks and the feedings and the poop pickups, but the depression has lifted. Except when anyone asks her how she wound up getting a puppy. Without missing a beat, she simply replies, "My dad killed my bird." And while I want to correct her every time and tell her, "The dog killed your bird," I don't. This isn't about blame. Although parent Al-Anon and our parent coach, who told me to let go, are not blameless. But instead, I take a deep breath and I remind myself I'm only human and things happen. And I need to focus on all the reasons to be grateful, even if with teenagers you have to look super hard. That said, if we had to place blame on anyone really, to be honest, it's Jonah. For wanting to be a model in the first place. Not cool.
Yes, Dan Bucatinsky. Yes. And I'm gifting him a membership to Temple Israel, so hopefully we'll be seeing more of Dan Bucatinsky. All right, how about a hand for all our performers tonight? Yes, David DeSantos, Greg Roth, Laurie Sandell, David Weissman, Meredith DeSantos, Dani, Dan. Thank you, Temple Israel.